We want to welcome each and every one of you that is here in our Olive Tree Fellowship Teaching Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico. From wherever you're at, welcome, welcome. You and those of you that are coming in from YouTube and our Torah Unleashed, thank you, thank you. We want to continue today on the secrets of Hanukkah and the coming anti-Messiah. Now, last week we started on what is Hanukkah, and last week we learned that there are levels of Hanukkah understanding. When people think of Hanukkah, they only think of one level, the traditional legendary level. But there are more levels than that, and we're going to look at all the different levels that Adonai will show us here. Now, what we studied last week was 3 of the levels. We studied the Hanukkah's level. Now, the Hanukkah's level is that there are more than one Hanukkah. When people think of Hanukkah, they just think of the Maccabean Hanukkah and the traditional Jewish Hanukkah of today. But there was a prophetic level from the book of Daniel. There was a historical level from the days of Antiochus. And today we're going to go through the legendary level and the messianic level. And next week we'll finish up with the moral and the eschatological level, or the last days level. And so let's go ahead and start on the secrets of Hanukkah. We're on chapter 4, the legendary level. Now, when we think of the modern Hanukkah, the modern celebration of dedication, we're thinking mostly of the Maccabean Hanukkah, which occurred 165 years before Messiah. Now, that was the historic time when it occurred. The first time Hanukkah or dedication is mentioned is in John 10:22. And of course, in Greek, John was written in Greek. So there it says, Egenetotote de Egania, which is, Egania is the word dedication or Hanukkah in Greek. And it was in Jerusalem, and it was winter, it says there. And so the first time that dedication, the celebration of dedication, is in the gospel. Now, after that, 200 years after the birth of Messiah, in the Mishnah, and later on in the Gemara and the Talmud, little mentions of Hanukkah are there, but there's no teaching on it. There's nothing, it's just reference that there was a Hanukkah of the Maccabees. Of course, Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, about 1180 of AD, of our time, of the Common Era, he mentions it, again, pretty much in passing with some excuse me, with some additional survey on it. But this is the chronology of the modern Hanukkah. Now, the events of the Maccabean Hanukkah became legendary. Remember, last week we studied about from the book of Maccabees and about Antiochus and all the things that they did, and he set up the abomination of desolation, which we saw prophetically from the book of Daniel in the prophetic level. From that time, legends developed, traditions developed, especially what is called the miracle of Hanukkah. The main legend of Hanukkah, modern times, is the miracle of Hanukkah. And one of the things that we will see is that this miracle never occurred. Now, according to the story and rabbinic tradition, again, this is tradition, It's not found in the book of Maccabees, the historical books of Maccabees. It's not found in anybody else, in Philo or Josephus or anything like that. And we're going to talk a little bit of what Josephus says. But as found in the Talmud, and again, in passing, that the victorious Maccabees could only find one small jug of oil that remained pure. And remember, this was kosher oil that had to be pure olive oil that was used to light the menorah. Now, they didn't have candles in those days. They had oil, olive oil. And all you have to do is get any dish or anything, put olive oil, put a wick, soak it up, and light it on fire, and you have a lamp. We're going to show a couple of examples. Well, every day they had to put new oil, and the jug only was for a day's ration. But what happened is that according to the story, according to the miracle, Hanukkah is 8 days long. The reason Hanukkah is 8 days long, we found out last week, was because Hanukkah is a mini Sukkot. Hanukkah is a mini Sukkot. And Sukkot is when the temple, the tabernacle of Moses was dedicated, was Hanukkah. The first temple of Solomon was Hanukkah, was dedicated on Sukkot. Zerubbabel's temple was dedicated on Sukkot. Dedication always took place 8 days, and it always occurred in Sukkot. Well, the Maccabees were still fighting a guerrilla warfare when the last Sukkot occurred. Well, now they took over the temple, and what they did is they got the stones of the temple, of the altar, and demolished them and put them aside. Remember what we said last week? They could not throw them away because they were holy stones, holy altar stones. But they could not reuse them again because they had been defiled by the blood and the juices of the pigs that were sacrificed on top of that altar. So they removed it to the side. And they needed to relight the lamps. And again, they only, the story goes, only had enough oil for 1 day. But a miracle occurred in that the oil lasted all 8 days. The lamps never lost their light. For 8 days, they burned on 1 jug of oil. Again, so it takes another 8 days to make oil, and it takes another 8 days to do that. And so one of the things that we need to look at is, did that occur? And the answer is no. Besides the Talmudic story, there is no historical evidence for that. So that's one of the first legends, or the major legend, that we need to, again, take out of our Hanukkah stories. Other popular Hanukkah myths is that Hanukkah is an important Jewish holiday. Now remember what we said last week. Hanukkah is not a holiday. Hanukkah is not a holy day. The word holiday means holy day. It is not. It is a celebration. Hanukkah is not a religious celebration. It is a secular celebration also, because this is a 4th of July type of a celebration. Yes, it's religious in the sense that we rededicated the altar, but remember, it was against the Grecians, against the Seleucids, against Antiochus, and it was a war, a guerrilla warfare, and the Maccabean brothers and their other guerrilla warfares, by the way, they're the ones that started guerrilla warfare, what we call guerrilla warfare. Now, another thing is that there's traditional Hanukkah food, latkes, and all these different kinds of foods that a lot of people, again, These are mostly northern European traditions and the Hanukkah foods. And a lot of the traditions, there are some that are Sephardic traditions, but the majority of them are Ashkenazi traditions. And so there is no such thing as Hanukkah food. That's, again, a legend and a myth. Now, the word Hanukkah, according to many people, is an ancient term. No, it's not. There was no Hanukkahs until, in fact, the first Hanukkah we're going to see was really in Spain in the Sephardic tradition. But the word Hanukkah is a term that was invented by Mrs. Ben Yehuda. You all know who Ben Yehuda is. He, in the 1800s, tried to bring in a dictionary, reintroduce Hebrew to the masses. And so when it came to separate from the menorah, the biblical menorah that was in the temple, for the 8-candle type of a menorah for Hanukkah, they named it Hanukkah. A menorah now is 7 branches, and a Hanukkah is 8 8 branches. Now there is a 9th, and we'll talk about that 9th. The 9th branch is called the Shamash, and many people say that's the most important candle. Well, again, that's one of the last additions to the 8 candles of what we term now a Hanukkah. The word Shamash means the servant candle. Well, what that was what we would call today a pilot light. Now, I have an ancient pilot light right here. And what a pilot light was, it is a pot. And the pot has leather, and it would hang right in by the front door coming into the house. Now, when a son got married, the father would get him a pot, and from the father's pilot pot, he would get embers and give it to the son. And sometimes there would be generations where embers, and as soon as the embers are going down, you put more wood so that there will always be embers. This is what we call a pilot light. Now, in Hebrew, in Torah, you cannot initiate a fire on the Sabbath. You cannot initiate a fire on the Sabbath. It is a capital offense to initiate a fire on the Sabbath. But you could transfer fire. You could transfer fire. So there was always this pot, and that's the symbol of the Father. And from there they would get, that's the shamash, that's a servant, a pilot like what we call today. And from there they would get and light the menorahs and light even here is an example of first century oil lamp. And all you do is put olive oil in there and put a little wick here and turn it on. It's not flammable. If it falls, it's not going to catch on fire. And so it's really a safe way of having light. And so they would do that. So what they did now, and again, we'll see this in Spain, they added that to the menorah of 8 different candles or oil spots. Now, it's a mitzvah to give Hanukkah presents. A mitzvah is now a good deed. The word mitzvah is actually command, to do a commandment. A mitzvot are the commandments. But the word mitzvah has taken on the meaning of a good deed. So it's a good deed to give Hanukkah presents. Where did it say that? Again, that's a tradition. And we're going to see that some of these traditions are because of the Christian Christmas. Hanukkah has become Christmassy throughout the years. There is no such thing as Hanukkah presents. Now, you could give presents whenever you want. We should always give presents. We should be very generous people. But it's not a mitzvah. It's not a good deed. You're not going to get, good points if you give Hanukkah gifts. And if you don't give Hanukkah gifts, then you are the grouch that stole Hanukkah. So, again, if you want to give gifts, give them any time. Again, the Christmassy Hanukkah really needs to go. We should not make Hanukkah into a Jewish Christmas, as we saw a little bit last week. Now, this is the actual menorah, a lamp of 7 branches. And from this, they added the 8 lamps for Hanukkah. Again, the Mishnah barely mentions Hanukkah and the Hanukkah lamp. And it's mentioned just in passing. This is the first mention in the Mishnah of Hanukkah, or a Hanukkah lamp. And what it was, if a camel got into the house and kicked over a lamp, and that lamp caught something on fire, then he was responsible. If it was outside, then the owner of the shop was responsible. But then here in the Mishnah it says the shopkeeper isn't liable if the lamp is a Hanukkah lamp. First mention, Hanukkah lamp. So at some point in time, they started having Hanukkah lamps. Now here's examples of Hanukkah lamps. Here's one that is there. Well, there's 2 of them with the different spouts for them to light. And there's also one with 2 spouts there. This one that is here is for 1 spout, but they have 1, 2, sometimes they have 3 spouts. But these are early examples of Hanukkah lamps, or what we would call a Hanukkah. Now, the first to associate Hanukkah and lights, where does that come from? Was the Jewish historian Josephus. Now, remember, Josephus was a priest. He was from the Kohanim, and he's writing late in the 1st century after 70 AD, in the destruction of the temple, 250 years after the Maccabean revolt, and he calls the celebration, or what is termed today the holiday, he calls it the Festival of Lights. But he didn't know why they called it the Festival of Lights, or what is the connection with lights and the Maccabean revolt and the Maccabean coming in of rededication of the temple. Maimonides then, in the 12th century, who was a Jewish philosopher. Now, Maimonides was not a Jewish theologian. Maimonides was not a Jewish Torah teacher. He was a philosopher. He was a Greek philosopher. He followed Aristotle and the Greek philosophers, as was common with the Jews and the Arabs in the golden age of Spain. Remember, Maimonides lived in Spain. And this was the golden age of Spain where the Muslims, the Moors, and the Jews and the Christians, they interacted in a very beautiful manner. They call it the golden age. Well, he was a philosopher. And he is the one that it is desirable to light a multitude, he said, of candelabras. That each person should own not just one single menorah, but each one should own one for the first night, one for the second night, one for the third night, and that everyone should have 8 in all. Again, this is tradition. He brought that in. The modern celebration, I guess, is kindling 9-branch menorah. the original 8, and then the shamash, which is the pilot light. The pilot light has to be, again, tradition, has to be lit before sundown. You can't light the pilot light after sundown. But after sundown, you could transfer from the shamash to each of the candles each night. Now there's different ways. There's Ashkenazi. You start right to left, left to right, and all that. All that, again, is tradition. There's no such thing even for believers, the body of Messiah, to light Hanukkahs. You can if you want to. That's tradition. But it has nothing to do with the original Hanukkah. It has nothing to do, and they would put it as in the windows so that the people, and again, that was when it was safe to do that. After that, after our ancestors were, the Inquisition came, that was no longer possible. Now, the Hanukkah, of course, the word comes in the 1800s, early 1900s, but menorahs would further evolve in the Middle Ages. And again, in the 13th century, again, the Inquisition happened in the late 1400s, but in the early 13th century, these Hanukkahs, if we could call them that, these Hanukkah menorahs were made out of tin or out of metal, and they were affixed to the wall of the house, and they had little cups so to put the oil, and you just put the oil in the little cup, and you just put a little wick and light it. Again, did they start one a night, or did they light them? Nobody knows, because there's no injunctions in history about how they did it. We get these little passing things that they did this or did that, or archaeologists find different things that we could speculate, oh, this is probably what they did. Again, the Samash is something of a later addition. Here's a very elaborate one. Now, another tradition is the dreidel. Now, again, this is a spinning top. Now, what it has is a top with 4 sides, and there are 4 Hebrew letters, a nun, a gimel, a hey, and a shin. Now, the letters stand for Nes Gadol Chaya Sham. A great miracle happened there. Again, this is something that probably came in Northern Europe. Of course, the story goes that when the men were coming, the Syrian soldiers were coming, and the boys were studying Hebrew, that when they were studying Hebrew, and what are you guys doing? What they were saying is, we were playing this game. And again, that's a tradition. Now, this is a European game. And I don't know if any of you here in New Mexico remember this, especially some of you viejos, and those of you that are viejos. But I remember, I still remember this. It was winter, because we had a bonfire in front of our house, and my uncles we were standing there, and one of my uncles got a spool, a wooden spool for a thread spool, and he got his knife and made it into a square, and then he got a stick and put it in there, and we were playing for pennies. And the name of the game that we called it was pon, which is put, y quita, to take away. Poner un pene, quitar un pene. So 2 P's and 2 Q's. But it's the same game that is a dreidel, where you either put, you take away, you put half, you take away half, depending on the tradition. But again, is it okay to do dreidels? It's okay to do dreidels all year long. It's not a game for Hanukkah, although it has become a Jewish tradition and legend that this is what they were doing. Again, we have no history for that. And again, Hanukkah has become very Christmassy. We have Hanukkah Harry, and this is Hanukkah Harry. And then we have the Hanukkah bush. Look at that Hanukkah bush with a dreidel on top. Now, doesn't that look more like a Christmas tree? And of course, there's Hanukkah. Now, some of those, how many of you like latkes? I like, they're great, But again, those are not Hanukkah foods. Those are foods that were eaten in Europe at the time that some of these came out. And so they're European foods that are good food. You could eat these all year long. But because they are made with oil, anything made with oil, because that reminds you of the miracle of the oil, which never happened. So if the miracle of the oil never happened, now you're having all these foods that have oil, which make us fat and clog our arteries, right? But Hanukkah has become very Christmassy. Again, we talked about Hanukkah gifts. Oh man, you get out of the Christmas tradition. I don't have to do all that, going to the mall and all this type of stuff, and everybody, their blood pressure goes up, and what do I have to buy? So we get out of that. I don't have to do that no more. Hanukkah, I got to go get gifts. Again, we're replacing, and again in Christmas, poor Christmas children, they only get one gift one day. But Jewish children get 8 days of gifts. I guess that's the only advantage that there is there for the kids. But yeah, we don't want it to become Christmassy. Now, another level is what I call the messianic level. Now, the messianic level has to do with Yeshua. Now, remember, this is our blueprint that we've been working on since last week. Here's Daniel, and Daniel prophesies the abomination of desolation, which occurs in 168 with Antiochus. Now, the prophetic level goes all the way to the start of the eschatological level, if we get through that today. But then over here we have the messianic level. The messianic level starts right before Yeshua, and it goes to his death, burial, resurrection. And of course, here's where the legendary level has occurred all these years. And the end of Hanukkah is going to be with the beast system, as we're going to be seeing either probably next week. Now the question is, did Yeshua celebrate Hanukkah? Did Yeshua celebrate Hanukkah? And my answer is, ding, 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 I don't know. I don't know if he did, because it doesn't say that Yeshua celebrated Hanukkah. What it says, that Yeshua came to Jerusalem not to celebrate Hanukkah, but to declare and assert his messiahship over Israel. Now, remember, Daniel prophetically predicted the abomination of desolation. He predicted 2 abominations of desolation. One with Antiochus in Daniel 10 and 11, and the future one, still future to us, in Daniel 9:27. Now, Antiochus, from last week's historic level, claimed to be Elohim. In fact, he claimed to be Zeus. Now, Zeus is the father god of the Greeks. And of course, Elohim is the father in the biblical. Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et ha'aretz. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So he's the father. He's the creator. That's who Antiochus said Jupiter, Zeus was. What he did is he made a statue of Zeus with his own face on it. And he claimed to be Zeus. And he claimed to be God. And that's why he did all the stuff there that's found in the book of Maccabees. I would encourage you, read 1st and 2nd Maccabees to get this story even more. And so one of the things that he claimed to be Elohim, he claimed to be the creator. Well, when Yeshua came to Jerusalem, Yeshua came to claim that he and Elohim were echad, were one. Now remember, this is Hanukkah. The Jews are celebrating the victory over Antiochus, who claimed to be Elohim, who claimed to be Zeus. They're celebrating that on this day. And Yeshua claims the very same thing that Antiochus claimed, except that Antiochus was one of the anti-messiahs, antichrist, and there's going to be more in the future, and then the final anti-messiah, the beast, and Yeshua is the true Messiah and the true Elohim. Yeshua is the only one that has the credentials to be the Messiah. And the term Messiah, Mashiach, means the anointed one. But remember, when we talk about a Messiah, Yeshua is not the only Messiah. The word Messiah is used in the Tanakh for all the kings of Israel. David called Saul my Messiah. David was called by those around him my Messiah, or my anointed one. The high priests of Israel were called Messiah. Cyrus, the Persian, a Gentile, a pagan, was called Messiah. The prince who will come in Daniel 9 is called Messiah. By the way, in the Greek Septuagint, translated from Hebrew to Greek 200 years before Yeshua, every place the word Messiah is found in Hebrew, we find the term Christos, where we get the English word Christ. Now the word Christos means, again, the same thing, to anoint with oil. Anyone who's anointed with oil. We use the word christened. They were christened. Same root from the Greek, that they are anointed. Yeshua was the anointed one, the true anointed one of Adonai. Here are a couple of places where the word Messiah, the horn of his Messiah, my king, Psalm 2. Again, Yahweh calls him my son, the Messiah, my king. Daniel 9:24, Messiah, the prince. Of course, Kurioi Christos is found in Psalm 2 and Daniel 9 there. Now, the first secret of the messianic level is the conception and birth of Messiah Yeshua. Now, what does Hanukkah have to do with the conception and birth of Yeshua? Now, the traditional teaching of Yeshua's birth on December 25th is a false narrative. A false narrative. Yeshua was not born on December 25th. That is the birth of Dionysius, the god of wine, drunkenness, and revelry of the Greeks. It has nothing to do with Yeshua, like Easter Sunday. Has nothing to do with the resurrection of Yeshua. That's the celebration of the goddess, the fertility goddess, pornographic goddess, Ishtar. Now, if we study Luke 1 through 2, it reveals to us the true and historic account of the conceptions and birth of Yeshua. Every Sukkot, first day of Sukkot, and I have charts back there where I have outlined how we could prove when Yeshua was actually born. And we will be looking at that briefly here right now. But we have, again, those are large teachings that we do there. At the time of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zachariah. Zachar is remembers, and then Yahweh remembers, who belonged to the priestly division of Aviah. My father is Yah. His wife, Elisheva, the oath or the oath of Elohim, my Elohim, was also a descendant of Aaron. And at this point, Yochanan is conceived. Now we know when he was conceived, because he was the 8th section. If you go to First Chronicles 24, you will see that the 8th section, the Aviah section, of which Zachariah belonged to, was the 8th of the year. And this was right after Shavuot, was the Aviah section. He goes home, has a normal pregnancy, 40 weeks, which means that Yochanan was born at Passover time. If he was conceived right after Shavuot, 40 weeks later, he was born at Passover. And again, the angel appeared to him and told him he was going to have a son, and to name him Yochanan, and that he was going to come in the power of Eliyahu Hanavi, to prepare the way for Yahweh. Now watch what it says. To prepare the way for Yahweh. That's what the Hebrew says. Now, what's interesting is that the one that he was preparing the way for was Yeshua. Yeshua is Yahweh. Now, what's interesting, Yeshua was born on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles in the fall of the year. He was born on Tishri 15th, which usually falls in late September or early October. This means his conception was on Hanukkah 40 weeks earlier. So it was Hanukkah when the conception of Yeshua came, when Psalms 2 and Luke says that the angel Gabriel came to Mary. Of course, there's over 300 prophecies that have to do about Messiah, where, when he was to be born. Therefore, Adonai himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and you shall call his name Immanuel, Elohim with us. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by Elohim to a town in Galilee called Nazareth. This is what we call the Annunciation. When Adonai to Mariam tells her that she's going to have a son, and this son is going to be Ben El Elyon, the son of Elohim Most High. And there we see a triadic verse where Yeshua, when Mary says that, how can this happen? I'm a virgin. He says, the power of El Elyon will come upon you, and the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, will cover you with his shadow. And so the child shall be Kadosh. It will be son of David and son of Elohim. Yeshua is Ben David and Ben Elohim. And so what happened is This was Hanukkah. Now, we go back, Yeshua was born on Sukkot. So in the sixth month of, and again, we could detail this. I have a whole series on this. On the sixth month of Zechariah and Elisheva's pregnancy is when Yeshua is conceived. And you count 40 weeks from there, from Hanukkah, and you get to Sukkot. So Hanukkah and Sukkot have a connection. Now the connection is Yeshua conceived on Sukkot, conceived on Hanukkah, born on Sukkot. But remember the other connection. The other connection of Hanukkah and Sukkot was the Maccabees were out in the mountains still fighting when Sukkot was happening. And when they came and defeated, a couple of months later, it was on the 25th of Kislev, 3 years to the date of when it was taken. On the 25th of Kislev, what we call today December, is when the temple was taken by Antiochus. The 25th of Kislev is when they rededicated the altar 3 years later. So there's two connections between Sukkot and Hanukkah. Now, Josephus says that Judah, Maccabee, and they celebrate the festival of the rededication and of the sacrifices of the temple for 8 days. Again, for their posterity, they should keep a festival celebrating the restoration of their temple for 8 days. And from the time to this, we celebrate this, which we call the Festival of Lights, Phota, where we get the word photo from light, phos in Greek. Because I imagine beyond our hopes were brought to light. And so this is the name that at that time, in the time of the first century, it was a Festival of Lights. Isn't it interesting that the angel Gabriel came to Mariam and told her that she was going to give birth to what would be called the light of the world. Yeshua is the light of the world, and Yeshua is the one that gives us true light so that we don't walk in darkness. Well, here's one of the biggest secrets of Hanukkah and the date of Hanukkah and the dedication when Yeshua came to Jerusalem. This is Hanukkah of the 33rd year of the Common Era. John 10:22. It was the dedication, Hanukkah, Ekainia in Greek, in Jerusalem, and it was winter. And Yeshua was in the temple walking up and down the portico of Solomon. Question, why was he just walking up down the portico of Solomon? It's a porch. He was just going back and forth, back and forth. And here's the Temple Mount. Here's the east, north, west. Here's the western wall where we go pray. Here's the Huldah gates and the steps. Here's the royal stoa. This is the portico of Solomon. And in the time of Yeshua, right here in this corner, there was a pile of stones. There's no rocks on top. There's no trees on the Temple Mount. Everything was marble. But over here was a pile of rocks. What was that pile of rocks? That was the altar stones that had been demolished. They couldn't throw them away because they were holy. They couldn't use them because they had been defiled. So what do? Well, according to Josephus, according to the Maccabees, they were supposed to wait till a prophet came. And so Judah selected priests who were blameless and zealous for Torah to purify the sanctuary and remove the stones of the abomination to an unclean place. Again, outside of the temple, 400 by 400 cubic meters. And they properly decided to pull it down rather than it be embarrassed about it, since it had been defiled by the Gentile. They therefore demolished it and deposited the stones in a suitable place on the Temple Mount or Temple Hill, to await the appearance of a prophet who should give a ruling about them. What do we do with these stones? Do we throw them away? Do we keep them? What do we do with them? That prophet is the Messiah that they were waiting for. And again, it is here that they were deposited. Now, the Jews gathered around him and said, "How much longer are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." And Yeshua says something very important. He says, "The Father and I are echad." The Jews fetched stones to stone him. So Yeshua said to them, "I have shown you many good works from my Father. For which of these are you stoning me?" The Jews answered him, "We are not stoning you for doing a good work, but for blasphemy. Though you are only a man, you claim to be Elohim." So his enemies knew that he was claiming to be Elohim. Remember, this is Hanukkah. This is the celebration of when Antiochus claimed to be Elohim, claimed to be God, claimed to be Zeus, claimed to be over everything, and was defeated. So they picked up stones to stone him. Yeshua, a lot of people say Yeshua never claimed to be Elohim. And here's one example. How do we know? Because of the reaction of the people. Now, in Colossians 2:9, it says, "For in him all the fullness of the Elohut dwells bodily in him." The fullness of the Elohut. This is the Hebrew word that is found there, Elohut. This is the echadness. In English, in King James, we could say godness or God, Godhood. The King James translation says, "Dwells the fullness of the Godhead." They use the term Godhead. That is a King James word that should not have been put there. It's the fullness of the Elohut, the fullness of divinity, of deity. Came into the complete deity, complete divinity of the Father dwells in Yeshua, in his body. Here are verses that if anybody wants to go continue studying this. And again, this is a whole teaching on itself. Yeshua claims equality with Elohim. Why is this significant? On this very day, on Hanukkah day, Kislev 25. This was Kislev 25. Antiochus claimed on that day he was God. What was the outcome? 3 years of guerrilla warfare. The Jews called this blasphemy, a capital crime, stoning. Now remember, they did not have the power to stone. They did not have that authority. So they would have been acting illegally, but they wanted to do it. Yeshua is the true Messiah, the Son of Elohim. Now there is a spirit of anti-Messiah. Nimrod was the first anti-Messiah. Nebuchadnezzar, Alexander the Great, Antiochus, the Caesars, the beast. There's not only one anti-Messiah. There are many anti-Messiahs in the time of the first century when John wrote this. Now, as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came privately. "Tell us when these things shall be, and what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world. Therefore," and this is his answer, "when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken by Daniel, the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand." Remember, when is this going to happen? When is the end? "You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. You shall hear of famines, this and that, tribulation." The end is not yet. As long as there's war, as long as the whole world is on fire with war and problems and all the stuff that goes on, you're safe. The end is not yet. But when they say peace and safety, shall sudden destruction come upon them. When everything is safe, when the Antichrist comes and puts the world at ease, brings peace in the Middle East, brings peace in America, in Britain, everywhere, China, Russia, then we have to worry about. That's the time, not now. Let's go ahead and stand, and we'll continue here next week. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to teach on Hanukkah. And Father, as we build on these levels, as we build, Father, and allow your word to speak to us, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, that we will be men and women that rightly divide the word of truth, that have discernment. Yeverechecha Yahweh va'ish merecha, Ayir Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha, Asa Yahweh panav elecha, vayasem lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.